It was 5:47 on a Friday, and I was already halfway out the door, keys in hand, mentally tasting the overpriced margarita waiting for me at Hacienda Rosa. Then came the ping. That stupid, soul-killing ping. Mandatory all hands, 5:50 p.m. Rick. I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, because it was predictable, like salmonella from gas station sushi. I turned around, slumped into the break room folding chair we now called Conference C, and stared at my reflection in the microwave door. Rick strutted in 5 minutes late, fresh off his weekly ego bath, sleeves rolled up like he'd ever lifted more than a triple foam latte. "All right, listen up," he barked, flipping open a manila folder that probably just had a doodle of his own initials. "Site readiness is slipping. No more dropped balls. So I'm canceling weekend rotations. All working, I didn't even flinch. I'd heard worse. But then he looked straight at me, paused for dramatic effect like some community theater villain, and said, "We own your weekends now, Lisa." And that was when something inside me just flipped. Not cracked, not broke, flipped. Like a switch you didn't even know was there. I smiled. Just a twitch at the corner of my mouth, tight and dry like the desert air Rick's personality came from. Then I did something I hadn't done in 6 years. Absolutely nothing. See, what Rick didn't know, what no one in that fluorescent-lit hellscape realized, was that my safety officer certification was due for renewal. As in right now. I had the portal open in another tab, finger hovering over the payment button. $100 and 30 minutes of ethics questions stood between them and legal compliance. And instead of paying it, I closed the browser. Sometimes the best revenge is just stillness. Let the machine eat itself. Before I go on, real quick, if you're enjoying this story and want to hear how this flaming bag of corporate arrogance lights itself on fire, do us a solid. Hit that subscribe button and give the story a like. Apparently 93% of folks listen without subscribing, and honestly, every click keeps the team caffeinated and dangerous. All right, back to Rick's slow-motion career implosion. I'd been with Ravelin Infrastructure for 6 years, long enough to memorize the OSHA codes and everyone's coffee orders. I wasn't flashy, and I didn't pretend to be. I was the one who made sure things didn't fall apart, who handled site logs, hazard reports, training compliance. You know, the boring stuff no one notices until it explodes and costs 6 figures an hour, which is exactly what I was counting on. Rick was new, promoted from some procurement role after his boss got reassigned Reed, caught sending stock tips to his mistress via company email. And Rick had the swagger of someone who thought compliance was just a buzzword HR made up to ruin golf plans. He walked in day 1 acting like he invented concrete. By week 2, he was canceling holidays and scheduling productivity huddles during people's lunch breaks. But what really set him apart, what made me certain this man would be his own undoing, was the way he treated protocol like it was optional. Guidelines were for junior staff. Legal clauses were suggestions. And oversight? Well, that was just a hurdle for people too slow to duck under it. So when I got that third and final reminder email about renewing my cert, complete with big red letters saying failure to renew will invalidate safety officer status effective immediately, I didn't panic. I didn't forward it to compliance. I didn't even mention it to HR. I forwarded it to Rick. Subject line, time sensitive, please confirm coverage plan. He never opened it, and I made damn sure I had the Reed receipt to prove it. That was the first domino, the quiet one. The one nobody notices. But in 3 weeks, the auditor would. And when he did, Rick's kingdom of buzzwords, bravado, and fake bravado would come crashing down, one clause at a time. Monday started with blood, not literal, just that metaphorical kind corporate loves to mop up with learning opportunities and lukewarm coffee. At 7:12 a.m., a subcontractor named Wes, sweet kid, maybe 22, looked like he still got haircuts from his mom, slipped off the loading platform. Wet surface. No signage, no cones. No one on spotter duty. He landed hard, but nothing broke, just bruised his hip and the last shred of faith he had in adulthood. Now here's where it gets chewy. Per contract protocol, any incident, triggers a chain reaction. Site report, compliance alert, and a digital safety review uploaded within 24 hours to the HQ portal. Normally, I'd be the first to file it, escalate it, and kick off the whole bureaucratic ballet. But that morning, I just filled out the minimum. No flags. No escalation, no copy to the compliance board. Just slip and fall, no injury monitoring, like a shrug in document form. Nobody noticed my cert was expired because no one was looking. Rick came swaggering through the site office around 10, holding a breakfast burrito like it was a damn Olympic torch. "Heard about Wes," he said. "Nice response, Lisa. Fast, efficient. That's what I like to see, clean ops." Clean ops. Man wouldn't know clean if it bleach slapped him across the face. He had no idea I'd let that report sit just below the radar. No idea I hadn't logged it with HQ. No clue that right now, in the system that pays our bonuses, the official safety officer was technically a ghost. But Rick, he was already on the horn with some regional VP bragging about how his new culture of accountability was working. Said the team caught a hazard before it became an incident. Called it a near-miss success story. I nearly choked on my own rage. He was spinning a protocol violation into a case study for leadership brilliance. Lisa of 2 years ago might have screamed, might have marched into the break room and slapped a laminated OSHA manual down on the table like the 10 Commandments. Lisa of now, she just nodded and sipped her cold gas station coffee like it was vintage Merlot. That's the thing about slow revenge. Tastes better when you let it breathe. Later that day, I walked past the first aid kit. Someone had left it open. The gauze was in disarray, a splatter of antiseptic wipes like confetti after a bad birthday. I closed it quietly, didn't log that either. Let it all accumulate. Let the rot bloom under the polished surface Rick was so proud of. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the system, how quickly a place forgets who keeps it running. Rick was the kind of guy who'd fire the mechanic and complain the engine was noisy. He didn't understand how many corners had to be square for this place to not implode under its own concrete and clipboard weight. And I knew the audit was coming. Oh, yeah. That quarterly check-in, it was on the books. Just far enough out that no one was panicking yet, but close enough that every shortcut, every missing signature, every untied procedural shoelace was about to trip someone hard. That's why I didn't need to yell, didn't need to rally allies or send fiery emails. I'd already lit the fuse, and I knew exactly how long it was. The third and final reminder hit my inbox at 6:08 a.m. like a polite little nudge from a very expensive guillotine. Subject: Final notice certification expiration imminent. Body: Your safety officer credential will expire in 72 hours. Renewal required to maintain compliance. Please click here to complete your recertification. I sat staring at it, bathed in the ghost light of my company-issued laptop, the cursor blinking like a metronome counting down to impact. I didn't panic, didn't wince. I just leaned back, sipped the last of my burnt French roast, and forwarded it to Rick with the subject line, "Time-sensitive, please confirm coverage plan." No text, no emojis, just that. I didn't expect a reply. I wanted the silence. Silence would be my receipt. He never opened it. I know because I enabled the read tracker from my private Gmail add-on. A trick I picked up during the great glitch of 21 when the compliance software failed to auto-archive 2 months of training logs and everyone pointed fingers like we were playing OSHA Clue. But this time, I wasn't cleaning up the mess. This time, I was building it. I hovered over the link to renew, hovered like someone staring at the eject button mid-flight. One click and I could be back in the saddle. The good soldier, the box checker, the overachiever with a back brace and 5 extra vacation days she never used. Instead, I clicked archive. The email disappeared like a bad memory swallowed by the void. And with it, so did my last thread tethering me to the illusion that this place deserved my rescue. You have to understand, this wasn't just a tantrum. This wasn't Lisa getting spicy because she didn't like the new guy. This was a shift, a tectonic decision wrapped in silence. Because the truth was, I'd given them everything. Birthdays, skipped, holidays. Can you hop on for 5 minutes? Weekends? Let's not even pretend. There were days my cat forgot my face and hissed when I came home smelling like rabar and microwave burritos. All because I believed in doing things right, in being the calm in chaos, making sure everyone got home with all their limbs and lawsuits avoided. And the moment Rick told me they owned my weekends, something snapped so cleanly inside me it left no debris. Just clarity, cold, precise clarity. He didn't deserve my warning, so when that final expiration window closed, quietly, without ceremony, I didn't flinch. I didn't rush to tell HR. I didn't escalate. I just documented the chain. Every email, every unread message, every folder backup and version-controlled safety doc I'd been keeping on my personal drive for just such a moment. I had already become a ghost in the system, still visible, still helpful, Still attending meetings, offering suggestions, nodding at Rick's buzzwords like they weren't pulled off a LinkedIn post about synergy optimization. But behind the scenes, I was ice. I moved through the office like an undertaker with a clipboard. Calm, measured, watching the cracks in the drywall deepen, watching how often Rick skipped over key updates in meetings, watching how many documents he delegated without reading, watching him build his house of cards with greasy fingers. He thought the role of safety officer was just a title, a checkbox, a seat filler. He didn't understand that it was the linchpin, the one name in the binder that made the whole construction site legally viable. And in 48 hours, the name would no longer be valid. Let it lapse, I thought. Let him lapse. Rick called the audit prep meeting War Room Alpha, like we were storming Normandy, and not just organizing compliance binders in a double-wide trailer next to a porta-john that reeked of despair and expired subway coupons. It was 7:45 a.m. Rain was coming in sideways. I walked in soaked to the knees, holding a steaming cup of instant regret masquerading as coffee. Took my seat, same corner chair, same flickering overhead light that buzzed like a hornet trapped in a vodka bottle. Rick stood at the front like a game show host with no prizes, waving around a laminated checklist like it was sacred scripture. "All right, team," he boomed, "audits in 10 business days. We nail this, and regional gets off our back for the quarter. I want everything perfect. Every I dotted, every T crossed, every safety binder updated." Made eye contact with me, brief, performative, then immediately turned to Trevor, the guy who once filed a safety report using Comic Sans. "Trevor, you've got PPE logs. Tanya, site orientation docs. Lisa, you're in charge of safety cert uploads, right?" I opened my mouth, paused, then said, "Sure." He didn't wait for follow-up. Just nodded and moved on like I was a bullet point on his PowerPoint. That was his mistake. That morning, I opened the shared audit binder, the digital archive where every document lives or dies. I reviewed it slowly, methodically, section by section. Training logs, chemical handling checklists, forklift certifications. I updated every one of them, except mine. I skipped the safety officer credential field entirely, left it blank. Didn't upload the expired cert, didn't doctor it, didn't fudge a renewal. I simply omitted it, let the silence do the talking. I backed up everything, not just the files, but the timestamps. I saved email receipts, system logs, the renewal notice, the unread email I sent Rick. I screen recorded myself navigating the binder, a little behind-the-scenes documentary for the auditor, in case things got spicy. I even backed up the old version of the binder, the one Rick reviewed and signed off on in a previous meeting, confident as a raccoon near an open dumpster. Know what the best part was? He didn't even ask, didn't double-check, didn't verify, just clicked approve and strutted out of the trailer like he'd just reinvented risk management. The man thought leadership was a volume knob. Crank it loud enough, and people will stop asking if the music sucks. I sat back in my chair, fingers laced behind my head, and watched him high-five Trevor. It felt like watching someone light a firework while standing on a gas leak. I knew the audit was going to land hard. I knew Garrett, the compliance officer assigned to our region, was old school, no nonsense. The kind of guy who read contracts like scripture and spoke in full legal citations. You didn't bluff with Garrett. You didn't wing it. And you definitely didn't present an empty credential field and expect to walk away whole. Rick was too arrogant to see it, too busy riding his own echo chamber. But me was watching every loose screw, every skipped review, every single time Rick dismissed a policy as overkill. The tension wasn't fear, it was focus. The same kind of quiet you get right before the hammer drops. I walked back to my desk, opened a new folder titled Just in Case, and started uploading my backups. Every trap needs a trigger. Mine was almost set. Garrett showed up on a Tuesday like a thunderclap in khakis. No heads up, no warning email. Just a silver Ford Fusion pulling up to the gravel lot, spotless despite the mud, with a government issue laptop bag and a clipboard tucked under one arm like he was showing up to audit God himself. He stepped out of the car wearing a windbreaker zipped to the chin and an expression that could sandblast drywall. The receptionist buzzed our trailer like she was announcing a hurricane. "Compliance on site. Name's Garrett. Says he's with the client's audit division." I didn't smile, just said, "I'll get Rick." Rick came bounding out of the back like he was being summoned to accept a daytime Emmy. Collared shirt barely tucked, tablet under his arm, smile already plastered on like it was part of his skincare routine. "Garrett, welcome. Bit of a surprise, I would have rolled out the red carpet. Garrett gave him a single nod. I don't like advance notice. I prefer the real picture. Translation: I want to catch you screwing up in real time. Chuckled like they were old war buddies. Well, you're in luck. We're running a tight ship these days. Let me walk you through the site. You'll see how we've elevated operations. And so began the descent. I stayed a step behind, clipboard in hand, watching like a forensic pathologist at the scene of an accident that hadn't technically happened yet. Rick strutted through the scaffolded walkways like a game show host on a behind-the-scenes tour. I've had 0 recordables this quarter. Safety incidents are down 47%. Lisa here's been running point on most of the internal reporting, real rock star. Garrett didn't write a single thing down. He just kept glancing at the edges, at the extension cords not taped down, at the frayed safety net under the lift platform, at the forklift parked half an inch past the no staging line. Rick didn't notice, too busy throwing jargon around like glitter at a cheap wedding. "We've fully integrated the proactive risk matrix," he said at one point. I didn't even know what that meant, and I'd invented half our spreadsheets. Finally, about 20 minutes into the tour, Garrett stopped walking. He turned to Rick, calm, deadpan. "I'll need the current safety officer credential file." Rick blinked. "Sorry, the safety officer," Garrett repeated, enunciating like he was reading to someone hard of hearing. "The individual currently designated for this site. I need the active certification, date of last renewal, and authorization trail." Rick froze for a split second, just long enough to smell the gas leak before lighting the match. "Oh, that's under Lisa's purview," he said, flashing his tablet and turning to me. "Lisa, go ahead and pull that up for him." I didn't move. I looked at Garrett, then Rick. Back to Garrett. Garrett's eyebrow lifted just a hair. "That's not how this works," he said. "You're the director of site operations. The credential chain lands with you. If you've assigned a safety officer, you should be able to verify they're compliant. On record." Right now, Rick's smile wavered, not gone, but cracked, like a wind-bent fence post just before it splinters. "Well, I mean, Lisa handles the documentation. I'm not asking about documentation," Garrett cut. "I'm asking who currently holds a valid, active credential for safety oversight on this site, as of today." I could hear the silence pressurize behind my eyes. Even the hum of the transformers in the background felt louder. Rick fumbled with his tablet, swiping and tapping like he could will a PDF into existence. Garrett waited exactly 7 seconds, then pulled out his own laptop, opened the client's contract, tapped a few times before holding it out for Rick to see. "Section 4.2, he said plainly. "Continuous operation of this site is contingent upon a current, validated safety officer certification being on file. No certification, no work, period." Rick's mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. That was the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. He wasn't in control. He wasn't even in the same ballpark as control, been pretending to steer the ship. But he just realized he was gripping the emergency brake and calling it a wheel. Garrett turned to me. "Lisa, are you currently certified as of today?" I met his gaze, steady, calm, no smirk, no flare. Just the truth wrapped in 6 years of being underestimated. "No," I said. "My credential expired 11 days ago." Garrett didn't blink. He simply reached into his coat, pulled out a red tag, and slapped it on the nearest post. "Site is shut down, effective immediately." The descent wasn't a scream. It was a whisper and a click. Garrett's fingers moved with surgical precision, tapping through the master contract like a man defusing a bomb he's dismantled 100 times before. The tablet screen glowed cold in the overcast daylight pouring through the site trailer's cracked blinds. He scrolled down slowly, past insurance clauses and indemnity language, until the blue highlight stopped on a single, bloodless line. Section 4.2 Safety Compliance Mandate. An active, verified safety officer credential must be maintained on file at all times. Operations conducted without said credential are in breach of contract and subject to immediate suspension and penalty enforcement. Garrett turned the screen toward Rick, who stared at it like it was a Rorschach test, and he couldn't see anything but his own career swirling down the drain. Then Garrett tapped again, this time opening the client's credential database, a secure portal every site submits to for legal verification. He entered our project code, waited, the system loaded, then no active safety officer credential found. Garrett didn't look surprised. He just tilted his head slightly, like a mechanic listening to a dying engine. Confirmation code, null. No cert on file since, he checked, 11 days ago. The trailer went silent. Even the printer stopped humming, like it was trying not to get implicated. Rick stammered. There must be a mistake. We had it. Lisa, he gestured toward me, voice rising in that way men do when their reality starts buckling, but they still think volume will fix it. Garrett didn't even flinch. He turned to me, voice low but clear. Lisa, do you currently hold a valid safety officer credential as of today? I didn't rush, didn't blink. Just met his eyes and said calmly no, it expired. I submitted a notice for coverage planning. It was not actioned. Rick's head snapped toward me like a broken marionette. You what? I sent you the final reminder, I said, voice even unbothered. Subject line, time sensitive, please confirm coverage plan. Dated 12 days ago, it's still in your inbox. Garrett gave one slow nod. That will suffice. Then, like flipping a switch, he activated the shutdown protocol. He pulled a folded placard from his bag, neon red, laminated, stamped with the client's seal, and handed it to the on-site foreman, who had just walked in, confused and holding a half-eaten granola bar. Effective immediately, all site operations are suspended under contractual breach. No further work is to be conducted until compliance is restored and re-verified. Notify your teams. Secure all zones. Rick was still frozen. His face had drained to the color of drywall mud, flat, cold, cracking at the corners. That's going to trigger the penalty clause, he croaked. Garrett turned toward him slowly, gaze unblinking. Correct. Starting from the minute this visit was logged. $100,000 per operational hour. Retroactive from 9:02 a.m. I watched Rick do the math in real time. Watched his jaw clench as if he could chew his way out of the hole he'd just dug. $100,000 an hour. By lunch, penalty alone would be more than my annual salary. By out, it'd be enough to buy a beach house and stock it with lawyers. He opened his mouth again, but Garrett raised a hand. No discussion until legal review. You knowingly operated a site without valid safety oversight. You signed off on daily reports. You verified this week's compliance logs, all without confirming credential validity. Rick's voice cracked. I trusted my team. Garrett didn't even blink. We're supposed to lead them. He turned to me again. Thank you, Lisa. I'll need a copy of your correspondence. Any prior warnings sent internally. I already had the folder queued up on a flash drive in my pocket. It's ready. Rick didn't speak. He just stood there, one hand twitching at his side, the other still gripping that useless tablet like it was a lifeline. And me? I just sat back, quiet as a church mouse in steel-toed boots, watching Section 4.2 carve through Rick's ambitions like a scalpel through tissue. No gloating, no revenge speech, just gravity, letting the fall happen. The trailer's air had gone molasses thick, every breath heavy with tension and fluorescent dust. Outside, site crews stood in loose clusters by the chain-link perimeter, hard hats off, necks craned toward the office like they were waiting for a storm to break. No tools whirred, no forklifts beeped. Just silence, the kind that only shows up when payroll's on the line. Inside, Garrett stood dead center, legs apart like a man planting stakes. He looked around slowly, deliberately, eyes stopping on each of us in turn, Rick, me, Tanya, Trevor, who looked like he wanted to dissolve into his hoodie. Then came the question. Not shouted, not dramatic. Just clean, professional, and fatal. Who approved operations without compliance? Rick shifted like he'd swallowed gravel. We had systems in place. Lisa manages, Garrett cut in. That's not what I asked. He looked directly at Rick. No blink, no softening. Just the weight of contractual gravity pressing down. You're the director. You signed off on operational readiness for the past 12 days. You filed safety summaries. You greenlit payroll. You met with the client's engineering rep last Thursday and stated, quote, all compliance metrics are up to date. Garrett reached into his bag, pulled out a small folder, and laid it flat on the mobile desk with a quiet thump. In your words, he continued, flipping the page, you claimed exceptional adherence to client-side safety expectations. So I'll ask again, Director, who approved operations without compliance? Rick looked at me like I was supposed to throw him a rope. I didn't. Instead, I reached into my tote bag, pulled out the flash drive I'd labeled weeks ago, expiration warning plus logs, and plugged it into the docked laptop. Click, folder open, emails lined up like dominoes. There it is, I said quietly, projecting onto the wall screen. Final certification reminder, dated 12 days ago, forwarded to Rick at 6:08 a.m. Subject line, time sensitive, please confirm coverage plan. Garrett stepped forward. Open it. I did. The body of the email was simple. 2 lines, direct link to the renewal portal. A note asking for direction on coverage planning. Time-stamped, tracked, and beside it a status indicator. Unread. Garrett nodded. Did you receive any reply? No, I said. I archived it after 2 days. Standard escalation protocol requires response within 48 hours. Did you escalate it elsewhere? I'm not authorized to override without directive from site ops, I replied, tone still level. Rick held that authority. I looked at Rick, who had gone so pale he looked like a statue someone forgot to paint. Garrett turned to his assistant, a younger guy named Miles, who'd been silently typing notes this whole time. Trigger breach protocol, Garrett said calmly. Backdate start to 9:02 a.m., day 1 of lapse. Notify legal. Inform accounting to hold invoice approvals pending contract review. Rick finally found his voice, brittle and sharp. Wait, this is excessive. Was an oversight? It was noncompliance, Garrett said flatly. And it continued for 12 operational days. Every hour logged during that time is out of contract. Every permit issued is void. Every liability active. This is not punitive, this is procedure. Rick's mouth opened again, then closed. His hands gripped the edge of the folding table like he could squeeze an excuse from the laminate. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just watched. Not out of malice, not out of revenge, just observation. The kind of watching you do when you've spent years warning people about the fire hazard, and now, finally, the flames have reached the couch. Garrett looked at me again. Thank you for the documentation. I nodded once. That was all. The drive was still plugged in. The unread email still glowing on the screen like a neon I told you so, but I didn't need to say it. The contract spoke louder than I ever could. Mobile office turned into a mausoleum. After Garrett's declaration, no one spoke above a whisper. The site manager unplugged his tablet charger like he was disabling a bomb. Trevor stared out the window like it might offer an escape hatch. Even Tanya, normally the queen of back-channel Slack gossip, just stared blankly at the safety log, as if it had betrayed her personally. Rick stood still, jaw clenched, thumb hovering over his phone screen like a man trying to summon divine intervention through push notifications. Calling internal counsel, he muttered. Garrett didn't stop him. He simply gestured toward the far end of the trailer, where the makeshift conference zone was nothing more than a half-curtained storage alcove and a chair that wobbled if you breathed too hard. Rick ducked behind the curtain with his phone and a trembling laptop. The rest of us sat there, marinating in the aftershock. 15 minutes later, the door opened. But it wasn't Rick who stepped out first. It was Miles, Garrett's assistant, followed by an HR rep from regional HQ who'd somehow arrived without anyone noticing. She looked grim, clipboard in hand, lips pressed into a line that suggested this wasn't her first time escorting someone off-site. Rick emerged last, face slack, tie loosened. Mouth open just enough to suggest protest. Whatever he was about to say died somewhere between his chest and his pride. He didn't look at anyone, not at Tanya, not at me, especially not at me. The HR rep spoke quietly, professionally. Rick, per directive from legal and pending investigation, your access badge has been deactivated. You are being placed on administrative leave effective immediately. She didn't say you're fired. That would come later, after the paperwork finished bleeding. He stood still for another second, like he might argue. But instead, he turned, gathered his tablet and phone with shaking hands, and followed her out of the trailer. The door slammed with a finality I felt in my teeth. Silence. Then, Garrett reached into his coat, pulled out a fresh compliance tag, green this time, and handed it to me. For your records, he said. I nodded, accepted it wordlessly, and slid it into my folder. New acting director from corporate would be here in 2 days, Garrett informed us. Until then, operations would remain suspended. The penalties had already begun stacking in real time, $100K an hour, ticking like a metronome made of debt. At 3:21 p.m., my inbox pinged. Not a company message. This came through my private address. Encrypted. Addressed personally. The kind of email that doesn't come with spam, doesn't come with formatting. Just a digital fingerprint and a subject line that read, "We watched the audit. You handled it with discipline and control. Let's talk." It was from Farrow and Price, a federal compliance firm I'd followed for years, the gold standard in regulatory consulting. They didn't waste time on recruiters or HR fluff. They reached out like predators in suits, quiet, precise, and deliberate. I clicked it open. Inside, Lisa, we were briefed on the Ravelin site shutdown. Documentation protocol and audit posture were exemplary. We'd like to talk consulting, contract-based, with path to senior partner. Interested? No attachments, no application form, just a link with a one-time passcode and a time slot for a virtual meeting. I sat back in my chair, the one with the wobbly leg and the duct tape armrest. Outside, clouds rolled over the site like a blanket someone forgot to wash. Crews had started packing up tools. Caution tape fluttered in the wind. And inside, I felt, still, not triumphant, not smug, just settled, like watching a storm you saw coming months ago finally make landfall and knowing you were the only one who remembered to bring a raincoat. I didn't rush to reply. I didn't forward the message to anyone. I didn't even smile. I just quietly closed my laptop, unplugged the flash drive, and started clearing my desk. Not because I was running, because the door was finally open. By Friday morning, Rick's name had vanished like a clerical ghost. Scrubbed from the site directory, access logs, Slack channels, even the company group chat where he used to spam motivational quotes no one asked for. The only evidence he'd ever existed was a half-drunk energy drink sweating on the breakroom table, and a printer queue full of never-collected team alignment worksheets. Official word from legal was structural reassignment. Everyone knew what that meant. Rick was toast, not the burned kind you can scrape and salvage, either the charred black, set off the smoke alarm, left in the toaster during a fire drill kind. I showed up that morning not out of duty, but closure. The site was quiet, still under partial lockdown, but the tension had thinned. No more whispered have-you-heards or nervous eye contact at the coffee pot. Just a strange, weightless calm, like the air after a tornado. Damage done, nothing left to lift. Garrett had already left. His work was finished. But his fingerprint remained in every procedural sign-off, every new form uploaded with a time stamp labeled post-incident restructuring. The team had been divided. Trevor was reassigned under Tanya, who'd been quietly promoted to interim operations lead. She didn't gloat, just took the keys and started rewriting protocols like a woman who'd seen what happens when arrogance outruns documentation. No one mentioned me. No congratulations. No emails with subject lines like "Thanks, Lisa." No invitation to cake in the break room. But then, I logged into my payroll portal for the last time, mostly to cancel my direct deposit so the bonus wouldn't disappear into the black hole that was my student loan autopay. And there it was, one-time discretionary award. Line item code, retention acknowledgement, internal compliance safeguard. Amount, $15,000. No note, no sender. Just a silent nod in spreadsheet form. That was all I needed. I walked back to my desk, still duct-taped, still rocking slightly on one leg, and opened my bookmarks. Found the tab labeled Safety Officer Renewal Portal, same one that had sat there for 6 years like a loyal dog waiting for its command. I clicked, hovered, then hit delete. It vanished with a satisfying blink. Outside, the parking lot was half empty. A few contractors milled around, arguing over whether to reschedule shipments or scrap the week entirely. Someone was blasting classic rock from a pickup with more rust than paint. I stepped out into the sun, warm against my face, the air finally clear of stress dust and lies. Didn't tell anyone I was leaving, didn't wave, didn't write a sign-off email with best regards and a fake smiley face. I just got in my car, turned the key, and drove. The bonus would hit in 2 days. The call with Farrow and Price was scheduled for Monday, and the Ravelin job site still shut down, still hemorrhaging 6 figures an hour. As I pulled out onto the road, gravel crunching under my tires, I caught my own reflection in the rearview mirror. Not angry, not smug, just done. Finally done. And I thought to myself, if you're going to own someone's weekends, better make sure they still work for you.